Hey YouTube, this is the Phoenix Coder. Welcome to another video in the CCC series playlist. In this video, I'll go through the CCC 2022 J4 problem. Before I get into the problem, I just want to thank you for interacting with my previous videos and for your continued support. It means a lot to me. All right, so without further ado, let me get into the problem for today, the CCC 2022 J4. Okay, so this is the J4, problem J4/S2, and titled Good Groups. The problem goes as follows. A class has been divided into groups of 3. This division into groups might violate 2 types of constraints. The first constraint, some students must work together in the same group. The second, some students must not work together in the same group, like they must work in separate groups. Your job is to determine how many of the constraints are actually violated. So the input specifications will be, the first line will contain an integer x with x greater than or equal to 0. The next x lines will each consist of 2 different names separated by a single space. These 2 students must be in the same group. So that's like the first constraint. So it will contain for the next x lines. The next line will contain an integer y greater than or equal to 0 also. The next y lines will each consist of 2 different names separated by a single space. These 2 students must not be in the same group. Okay. Among these x plus y lines representing constraints, each possible pair of students appears at most once. So yeah, that's very good to know, so that it's not be redundant or something like that. Like you can have A and B in line 1, A and B in line 4. So the next line after those x plus y lines will contain an integer g greater than or equal to 1. The last g lines will each consist of 3 different names separated by single spaces. These 3 students have been placed in the same group. Each name will consist of 1 to 10 uppercase letters. Okay. No 2 students will have the same name, and each name appearing in a constraint will appear in exactly one of the G groups. Okay, so each name we see in the constraint will surely be in the group here. The following table, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they're just showing how marks are distributed. Then your output specifications, you should output a number between 0 and x plus y, which is the number of constraints that are violated. So yeah, let's look at the sample input 1. So our first line contains x, so x is equal to 1. And the 2 names are Elodie and Chi. So those 2 people should be in the same group. Next line, y is 0, so there's no constraint there. Then the next g is 2, so we have 2 groups. The first group, Dwayne, Ben, and Angeli. The second group is Chi, Francis. Is it Francis or I don't know? Chi, Francis, and Elodie. So looking at the constraint we had, it said LD and Chi must be in the same group, and that actually checks out here. So no constraint was violated. Then looking at sample input 2, X is 3. We have 3 constraints, A and B, G and L, G and K. They must be in the same groups with each other. The next is Y, which is 2. So we have D and F and D and G. So D must not be in the same group with F. D must also not be in the same group with G. Next, we have G, which is 4. Our integer G is 4. So we have 4 groups, ACG, BDF, EHI, DKL. Looking at the constraints, A and B are not in the same group. So that's the first one that was actually violated. G and L are also not in the same group. That one is also violated. G and K is in the same group. Now check D and F. D and F are in the same group, which is not meant to be. So that's another constraint that was violated. How about D and G? D and G are in separate groups. That means that one wasn't violated. So there were 3 constraints that were actually violated. So yeah. Now, okay, so that was the problem. Now, my approach to this problem will actually be as follows. Like they mentioned in the problem that no 2 students have the same name, so obviously their names are unique. So the constraints, I'm actually thinking of storing the constraints as dictionaries. because as you can see in this sample input 2, we actually had D and F and D and G. So it's actually possible that for a particular student, D, there can be multiple students in like each of the constraints. So I'll probably create a first constraint. It will be a map slash dictionary, and I'll be mapping the students to the list slash array of other students in that particular constraint. So that's what I plan to do. And for the integers, that one's actually quite clear. Getting of the names and the groups, yeah, you can do that. So also to check the constraint that I violated, I will actually check each group individually as they are given to me through the user. I'll check each group. So first group I was given was ACG. When I'm given this, I will check all these constraints. If any are violated here, then I will increment answer. Then as follows. Then it goes as follows. So that will be my approach to this problem. So without any much to do, let me just go straight into the code and implement this algorithm that I came up with. Hopefully it will be correct. Yeah, so this is the code. And I will be using C++ to solve this problem as my previous videos. If you would like to see this solution in another language, you can leave that in the comment section below, and I'll see to do to it. So yeah, so as I said, I will actually be storing the constraints in the form of a dictionary. So let me say the first constraint. Let me say constraint. Yeah, let me just say constraint will actually be to be a map of the string, which is people's name to a vector. I would like to use a vector in here because using an array you actually have to know the size, but here we're actually not going to know the size offhand. Like before we get to the computing, we won't know the actual size or the number that might be inside a vector. So that might be inside the array, sorry. So the best bet is to use a vector. So looking at all this, using a map string vector, that's why I actually had to include all of that up here. So include map for you to be able to use maps, strings, vectors. So yeah, the second one is the people that should not be in, oh shoot, people that should not be in the same groups. Yeah, just going to be actually the same thing over here. So yeah, this is how I'm going to approach it. So the very first thing is our integers x, y, and g. The first thing I'll be receiving is x, right? Which an x represents the people that should be in the same groups together. So that's the first constraint here. Let me bring these definitions down here. Sorry about that. Let's do this. And then it's here. And do the same here. Okay. I also need to declare the count. Like this will be the main answer that we're actually returning back. Like we're giving back actually this count, the number of things that were actually violated. So yeah. Oh yeah, that makes sense. This is the reason that it's probably not highlighting, right? See. Okay, so we declared all that. So now, in order for me to get the next x lines, I'll use a while loop. So while x is greater than 0, so we can actually store all that. Next, we'll be receiving the names. So let me just say name1, string name1, sorry about that, name2, name3. Name3, I'm just declaring name3 up here as once because we'll actually need it later when we're looking at the groups, since there are 3 students in this group. So yeah, this while loop, I have to be decrementing x for everyone I do, right? Because yeah, it has to be done that way for this condition here to work. Next, I will get the name one and cn name two. Okay. After that, we now add it to the constraint. Now add it to the constraint dictionary. So I'll be mapping this name one to the name two always. So since it's a vector, we have to use the method pushback to add values to it actually. So pushback name 2. Now this implementation will work because like here, I'm not going to have anything like duplicates. Like for example, since they mentioned that you can have like something like this, A and B, then in the next line you see B and A. Yeah, so it is never going to be redundant. So in my constraints variable, I'll never have things that are repeating. So yeah, that's why this will work. Next, sorry, still have caps on. Next, I will take in my y and okay. So now we have our two constraints, constraint 1, constraint 2. Let's just write this here. Same group, separate separate groups. Okay, so yep. The next we'll take in the groups. Then still be in the while loop. While g is greater than 0. Next, we'll be collecting the 3 students. Name 1, actually just put this in one line. Name 2, and name 3. Since the names are separated by spaces, so I'll collect the name 1, name 2, and the name 3. Now, what might happen is that let me actually go to the sample problems and explain what I'm about to say. So, looking here now, my constraints will map A to B, right? And G to L and the rest. So if I run my current code, like it will do all this, store the constraints, and go through the groups, each individual group. So to go through this ACG, what I want it to do is to check for the constraints for A in my constraints variable, in my constraints the dictionary, sorry. Then check the rest of these, the rest like name 2 and name 3, if they are inside that dictionary, and so on. Then I also have to check for C, and I also have to check for G. But it is possible that C and G, like C and or G, may not be inside that constraint. Because remember, I mapped the names to the list, or I mapped the names to the list of the students in a particular constraint. So, for example, C now doesn't have any. So, if I want to check for name 1, name 2, name 3, I have to be sure that they actually appear inside a constraint. Or I can handle the errors in my code actually using the try and catch block. So a short explanation, the try and catch block will actually try a particular block of code that might run into an error. Then the catch block is going to catch whatever error and execute what you want to happen if that previous block of code gets an error. So that's what I'm actually going to use, because if we try and access the constraints for C, that will get an error because there is no constraints for C, like looking here and here. So that's what I'm going to do. So going back to the code. So I'm going to use the try and catch block. Oh, sorry. Okay. Now, for I'm going to be looping through first. Let me check the ones for name one. So I'll be looping through the list in constraints one, or name, like the list for name one in constraints one. So string I, we're looking for each string in this vector, the list for name one. So to loop through each of the names in that list. Then if name 2 is equal to I, oh sorry, okay, let's go back. Constraint, the first constraint is one that should be in the same group. Okay, so either name 2 or name 3 should be inside that list. So if name 1 is not equal to I and name 3 is not equal to I, then that is a violation, because at least one of them should be inside this list, because they should be in the same group with name 1. So therefore we will increment count. So this is one violation. And the catch block here, to be honest, like I don't want anything to happen, even if there's an error. Like I just want to skip it, so I just actually leave this empty. I can leave this empty, and here, so any exception at all, it actually catch it. That's what this means. Okay, so that's how it be. So I'll just duplicate this more times. So now this will be for checking name 2, changes in name 1. Yep. Actually, the smartest way to avoid writing all this code would have been to make a function out of this. Like, yeah, but what gives? Yeah, let me just continue, because like I'm actually repeating the same code all over and over again, and not really efficient, if you get what I mean. So yeah. All right, so we actually have to do the same thing again, because we have the other constraint. So that one will be constraint 2. Be checking name 1. Then now the condition will actually change. Let's just go back. Okay. Yeah. Now the condition will actually change. It will be if this is equal to that, because constraint 2 is the people that should be in separate groups. So yeah. And this will change to or, actually, because we don't want them to be in the same groups at all. So yeah, actually, I'll write 2 different if statements for this, because if any of them are in the same group, then we want to increment count, not or. Because like if I write it or, then it might increment count only once, even when 2 of the violations or. So yeah. So if name 2 is equal to I, we increment count. And else if name 3 is equal to I, we also and count. Yep. Then we do the same over here. So that will actually go through all of them. And I'm just, oh, I forgot something. We have to decrement G at the end, so this can always work. Then, yeah, that is actually it for the code. Let's just look through it once again. I just use like a sample. So let's use sample input one. So sample input one, we have one here, so LED and G. So what will happen is I'll collect the integer one, my code, the integer one being X, and while one is greater than zero, this will run, store the names, push it back to the constraint, LED and G. This is zero, go to the groups, collect the groups, and to check if any of the other members in the group violate the constraints. If it does, increment this. This one is AND, because if name2 um like if name2 is not equal to the name that should be in the same group and the name3 is not there, then yeah, like if one of them is inside the list, then that constraint is not violated. So let me say we have A and B. So let me say we have A, B, C. So and A and B should be in the same group. So if name 2 is B, then it's not violated. Or if name 2 or 3, none of them is B, then it's violated. So yeah, that logic works out. And I believe I did that for each of the names. So looking at this code, I'm fairly confident in it. So I think it would be better to actually write a function for this particular code that was repeating itself multiple times. But it's all good. Now to check, let's just print out count. All right, now let me run my code to actually check if it works. I'm fairly confident though, very confident in it. So yeah, it's worked. Come on. Okay, one. Then the next is LED and G. Next is 0, then 2. We put in the groups. So first is Dwayne Johnson. That's actually my favorite wrestler. Like, favorite wrestler, and I wouldn't say he's my favorite actor, but he's one of my best. So, and this, oh shoot, I didn't write his name well. Sorry, Franchise. Anybody named Franchise? Also, please tell me if I'm saying this name correctly. I don't know. I'll probably check it after now. Nice. So we got our correct answers 0, but let's still run the code on our sample input 2 and see how that fares. Still taking time to build again. It's getting crazy. Thank you. And just go back to the sample input 2. Okay. Okay, sample input 2 versus 3, then A and B, D and L, J and K. So final box, it's taking in all the inputs correctly. So E and F, E and G. Then the groups, there are 4 groups: A, C, G, B, D, F, E, H, I. Lastly, J, K, L. 3 violations. Nice. Let's just go and check. Yep. Nice. We got the correct one. So no bugs in the code, and it ran successfully. So this will be my solution for this problem. Although, as I said, it could be, um, it could look way better than this because I would have simply made a function to actually check this. Like I would have written something like check. Then the arguments would be the arguments would probably be like the name 1, name 2, name 3. Then I also have to collect. I also have to collect the um constraints dictionary. I could simply make this a global variable, so wouldn't be an argument there. And yeah, that would have been way cleaner than what I'm doing. And like it would have returned a boolean like true or false. Then if true, count increments. If false, nothing happens. Then yeah. But for the sake of time, this will be my solution, and already clean. But yeah. Um. Although I'm not sure if this might be the fastest solution. Okay, it's not really slow because like according to the problem, it you actually have to check each. But the other thing here is my solution also doesn't take up much space actually, since I'm not storing each of the groups that are made. I'm only storing the constraints because that's actually all I need to remember. And I'm just like looking through each group that you actually feed into the program. So yeah, I think space and speed should be fairly okay. And as I said before, the code could look prettier. Yeah. So that is the end of my code basically. So yeah, feel confident with that actually. Okay, so that is the end of my code and also the end of this video on the CCC 2022 J4 problem. Thank you for sticking to the end of the video. Please leave a like and comment if you enjoyed the video and found it informative. Have a good one and see you in the next video.